Hi everybody, this is Series 1, Episode 1 of the Cranky Lawyers Legal Livestream. And I hope my volume is going through. This is the first episode. Okay. Some time ago I made a Facebook post about how I was considering doing live stream videos addressing some legal questions people may have, and I got a collection of questions regarding legal advice people wanted. And today's episode will be on the topic of citizens' arrests. And this topic was provided by Stein on Facebook, and her question was as follows. One thing I'm curious about is citizens' arrests. We know there are corrupt criminals in the White House. Why can't we serve them with citizens' arrest and get them out of there? The idea of an ordinary citizen becoming an arm of the law enforcement in some individual capacity goes beyond what may or may not be happening in the political realm, and I thought that that was a question of general importance and interest, and so that is what this episode will be about, is citizens' arrests. The first thing I'd like to mention is I will be referencing some documents throughout this presentation, and the documents, I have uploaded them on a blog post, and you can download them, and the link is in the description here in this video. You can download these documents, which comprise of statutes and case law, and you can read them at your leisure. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is what is a citizen's arrest. Okay. The general definition of a citizen's arrest, and this is from Wikipedia, is a citizen's arrest is an arrest made by a person who is not acting as a sworn law enforcement official. In common law jurisdictions, the practice dates back to medieval England and the English common law, in which sheriffs encouraged ordinary citizens to help apprehend lawbreakers. So before going into how the United States deals with the concept of citizen's arrest and what kind of authority is vested in you as an ordinary citizen to make an arrest, I have to first talk very briefly about the federal system. So what the federal system means is our country has two levels of governance, of jurisprudence. We have the federal system and the state system. And our two levels come actually from the Constitution. Under the federal system, each state, each of the 50 states, can make their own laws for any matters that are not specifically enumerated in the U.S. Constitution. And this springs from the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which states as follows: the federal government possesses only those powers delegated to it by the United States Constitution. All remaining powers are reserved for the states or the people. So what that means is, if a specific power is not given to our federal government in the Constitution, then that power resides in the individual states and the people of those individual states. And because of this federal system that we have, what kind of rights you have under the concept of a citizen's arrest actually depends on which state you're talking about, because that is a power that is delegated to the individual states, and each state deals with it differently. So I'll talk about two states. The first state I'll talk about is Florida, because I'm licensed in Florida, my law practice is in Florida, and I can talk about how Florida deals with it generally to give you a background on how one particular state deals with citizens' arrest. And the second state I'll talk about is DC, because that is the state where the White House is located, and that is the particular jurisdiction that Les Stein was asking about. So let's see how Florida deals with citizens' arrests and what kind of laws and powers are given to the people in the state of Florida. So in Florida, we follow the common law when it comes to true citizens' arrests. And when I say true citizens' arrests, I'm talking about people who are not law enforcement officers, just ordinary citizens. What rights do you have to arrest another person? And when I say that we follow common law, that means we don't have a particular law on the Florida books. We follow the history of the long history of court cases. Common law basically means the law as it developed in the courts, not through the legislatures, which are Congress people, state legislatures. Common law is the law that is developed through the courts. And so there are two statutes in Florida that go beyond the common law and specifically give two groups of people enumerated powers. And one of the statutes I want to talk about is section 901.15 of the Florida statutes. And you can find that document in the link that I have referenced. You can download it and read the statute yourself. And section 901.15 of the Florida statutes provides a statutory authorization for law enforcement officers to arrest without a warrant and provides protection for arresting when you have probable cause. The next statute I want to talk about is Florida statute section 812-015. And the reason I want to talk about this statute is a law, not common law. It's a state statute that specifically provides protections for a law enforcement officer, a merchant, a farmer, or a transit agency's employee or agent who has probable cause to believe that a retail theft, etc., or trespass, etc., is happening. So why am I talking about these two statutes? The way Florida has developed citizens' arrests is they rely on the long history of cases which may or may not clarify exactly what type of citizens' arrests you may make, but when it comes to off-duty police officers and storekeepers, there are specific statutes that give them authority to do citizens' arrests. So in other words, when you are in a store and you are suspected of shoplifting, they can detain you, even if they are not law enforcement officers. They can detain you until law enforcement officers arrive, and that is not only part of the store employees' duties under powers under citizens arrest, but as enumerated under Florida statute 812.015. Florida has not put in the statute books a specific law that authorizes individual citizens, not law enforcement, not stores or employees of stores, to conduct citizens arrests. So you have to look at what the case law says, how judges have interpreted. So I've uploaded several cases for you to take a look at. Believe it or not, most of the citizens arrests cases that have gone through the Florida courts involve law enforcement officers conducting citizens arrests while they are off duty. Phoenix versus State, once again, Phoenix versus State stated that under Florida common law, a private citizen does have the common law right to arrest a person who commits a felony in his presence, or to arrest a person where a felony has been committed, or where the arresting citizen has probable cause to believe and does believe the person arrested to be guilty. So although Phoenix versus State involved a law enforcement officer and whether or not that particular arrest was lawful, it does confirm that individual citizens of the state of Florida do have a common law right to arrest people who are in the act of committing a felony, or where you as the arresting citizen has probable cause to believe the person arrested to be guilty. In Ripley versus State, another Florida state case, the court held that in that case, the police officers were not conducting a citizen's arrest. They were acting under the color of law. In other words, they made an arrest, but the court determined that they were not making an arrest as a citizen under citizen's arrest, but they were making the arrest as officers of the law, and therefore the arrest was unlawful. Because when a police officer arrests you, they have a higher duty. For example, they have to obtain a warrant. They have to give you your Miranda rights. They have all these duties that are imposed on them. Whereas if you're a citizen making an arrest, those duties are not, you do not bear those duties when you are making an arrest as a private citizen. So what happens when a private citizen makes an arrest? We've talked about how there's a common law right in Florida where you can potentially take the law into your own hands and make an arrest if you feel that a felony is being committed. That's what the law says, but practically speaking, there are dangers to making citizens' arrests. And I'll give you one example from the cases that I've seen. This is Johnson versus Barnes and Noble. It's an 11th Circuit case, and it happened, I believe, in Florida. But regardless, the customer at a Barnes and Noble store was held by the employees for some charges. What ended up happening was when law enforcement personnel arrived, they didn't arrest this gentleman, the customer, okay? And he was let go. Consequently, he sued Barnes and Noble for false imprisonment in a civil case and for improper citizen's arrest and detainment. And he won a 6-figure judgment against Barnes and Noble for essentially abusing the citizen's arrest process. So just because Florida common law provides you with the right to conduct a citizen's arrest, if you do so and you end up being wrong in your judgment, you yourself as a citizen making that arrest can potentially open yourself up to a whole host of legal problems, including getting sued for false imprisonment. So that is the state of the law in Florida. What about DC? Well, DC actually is not a common law state, and I'll tell you why. Because in Washington, D.C., there is a very specific statute. It's the D.C. Code, Section 23-582, and that's a statute which codifies citizens' arrests, okay? And it references Section 23-581, subsection A2, on what type of actions a citizen can make an arrest for. And I'll read directly from the statute. A private person may arrest another who he has probable cause to believe is committing in his presence a felony or an offense enumerated in Section 23-581A2, or in aid of a law enforcement officer or special policeman or other person authorized by law to make an arrest. The way I read the statute is as follows. The DC statute allow citizens, a private citizen, to arrest another private citizen if you have probable cause to believe is committing in your presence a felony. Okay? Or an offense enumerated in another statute. And those offenses are felony, assault, unlawful entry, property damage, or voyeurism. And that's it. Okay? Or you can help a law enforcement officer in making an arrest. So under DC, so what happens, let's just talk about what may happen if you're making a citizen's arrest in DC and things go wrong. Let's say you arrest someone and he is not in the process of conducting a felony, assault, unlawful entry, property damage, or voyeurism, and you're not helping a law enforcement officer making an arrest, okay, then already you have to prove that you had probable cause to believe that that person was committing a felony. And let's say, and that is open to interpretation, that is open to an interpretation in a lawsuit. So if you arrest somebody in DC and it turns out that he wasn't committing a felony, then now you're potentially opening yourself up to a civil lawsuit, I would imagine, to show that you had probable cause to believe that the person you arrested is committing a felony. So although DC Code Section 23-582 gives you the right to conduct citizens' arrests, that right is not unfettered, and one must be very careful in going around arresting people. Other than that, I really don't have any other advice to provide because when I went on Westlaw and looked at all the cases that involve ordinary citizens, not off-duty police officers, but ordinary citizens making arrests, are fairly sparse. The vast majority of citizens arrest cases involve cases where off-duty law enforcement officers were arresting people under citizens arrest without a warrant. So I hope this has been educational for you. As is with many questions about the law, the answer is not completely settled, and I cannot provide you with a yes or no answer. I can only explain to you what the state of the law is, and if you would like to dig into the documents yourself, I invite you to go to the jampack.us blog post where I've uploaded all the statutes and the cases that I've referenced, and you can learn about it yourself. So I hope you've enjoyed Series 1, Episode 1 of the Cranky Lawyers Legal Livestream. I'm going to try to do these on a regular basis, and the questions that I'll answer, send them to me, and I'll try to pick one that I think has general public interest. And let me know if you've enjoyed this and you found this educational. Thank you.